So the answer in a nutshell is it depends.
Oh,
we're good.
Because I know
depends.
it's.
Depends.
Dang it! Ready?
It depends.
It depends.
Yes.
So basically, though, in a nutshell, what I've learned from you guys, it
Yeah.
depends, right? And so we need to just come meet with you and make sure we're prepared for the future. We want to talk a little bit about retirement mistakes. One, I think, dare we call it a trigger word that we all are in right now is inflation, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like that is always coming up, not just in our everyday, the fact that we're, spending 11% more at the grocery store and all the things, but obviously this is affecting our retirement planning, our investments, all the things, right? So what are your guys' thoughts? Is inflation part of the big mistake we make in retirement, or?
It is definitely one of them that we underestimate the impacts of inflation over time.
Okay.
And what's interesting is, for me, I've been, in the credit union having these conversations for a long time. And before I would talk to members about inflation, and it was almost as if it didn't exist. They didn't want to talk about it. It wasn't a big deal. And even when I would try to have that conversation, nowadays it's a hot button. Everybody's talking about it. Yeah. Everybody's feeling it.
It's clear. It's in your face.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's there. And so I think the bad news is it's here. The bad news is we're experiencing higher levels of inflation. The good news is now planning for it has become top of mind. And so people are a little bit more prepared to tackle that question.
Okay. So how do we tackle it? What does that look like? I'm investing more now because I know it's.
Depends.
Dang it!
You fell right into that.
I did.
I think the biggest thing is if you've done the proper kind of planning, you'll have a financial plan that builds in this idea that you can plan on inflation. So if you retire and your retirement income when you first retire is $50,000 a year, then you plan on the fact that next year you can take out 51, and the next year you can take out 52, and the next year 54, and the next, right? And if you have the kind of financial plan that when you test it to make sure you have enough saved and you've got the right sources of income, then when inflation happens, you're prepared and your income will keep pace with it. But if you don't do the planning, and that you haven't tested that, then when it happens, you internalize it and it hurts.
True financial planning also, when you do a financial plan, Jared's saying testing, a true financial plan will run a bunch of scenarios.
Okay.
And one of those inputs is inflation. And that's what I think what Jared is saying there is that we used to just put in or just do the default number, the 50-year historical average. But now, with what we're seeing right now with inflation, and there's lots of reasons for it, people are clued into it now. And so people are asking our advisors more, hey, what number are you putting in my financial plan to come out with those scenarios to stress test my financial situation? And that's a newer thing right now. It feels like, at least it's not new to us, but the clients are coming to us and saying, hey, we need to factor a different number in because this is getting out of control.
I had to, it was hard before to get clients to think about how big of an impact this was. And I'd always have to say, what did your parents pay for a home, right? What was that purchase price?
Sure.
What did you pay for a home? Yeah. And then say, guess what? There's going to be a day your child comes to you and says, I'm buying a car that's about the same price as your first home. And I know that sounds like insanity, but we're well on that path. Yep. And so you better build it into your plan or it'll be a lot harder to deal with.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of homes, right? Another, I think, mistake in retirement is involving real estate, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So what does that look like?
Underestimating the cost associated with real estate. And this is kind of sad. And I don't know, maybe you need to cut this, but
Cut it.
One of the things that I do see members quite often coming in around October, November, and they're getting a loan. And guess what they're getting a loan for? Property tax. Because they have underestimated the cost that their asset, that their real estate is going to cost them. But it's not just taxes. You have insurance, you have upkeep on the property. And so there's a lot of expenses that, again, when you're putting together these financial plans and you're planning on expenses, I think people don't do enough. They don't plan enough for the costs associated with real estate.
And especially like like you said, the maintaining of the home. So many members, the kids leave the house, the kids and the grandkids only come back maybe, handful of times a year, and they're heating this entire house, or they're cooling this entire house, or they've got all these rooms that are just going they're used, not even used for anything. And so I think that's one of the mistakes a lot of people, they hang on to the family home.
Well, and it's the cost, right? I mean, again, the cost to heat it inflates. The cost on insurance inflates. There's always costs that will be going up year after year. So again, you better.
And if you're living on a fixed income, fixed versus variable costs rising, then puts people in a crunch, right?
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Yep.
Yeah, well, and we talked earlier, obviously, about Social Security.
You're getting it.
I'm getting
Nailed it.
And Medicare, which are considered public benefits, right? Mm-hmm. Can I only rely on those? Is this a mistake as well?
It is a retirement mistake.
Okay.
Quite often, I'll meet with clients and I'll talk to them about retirement planning, and they will be relying too heavily or completely on things like Social Security. And it's, number one, Social Security is a great benefit, but typically it is very, very hard to have a good retirement living solely on Social Security. And there are changes to those systems. I mean, we talked about it. Again, I think we all in this room believe that those benefits will be maintained, but what if they aren't? And so it's a good idea not to just rely on that. And then even clients I meet with that, maybe they have a pension to go with their Social Security benefit. So, hey, I was lucky enough that I have a Social Security benefit. I also have a pension from my employer that I worked for years and years and years. And those are my only assets because that's all I planned on. Well, you live paycheck to paycheck then sometimes. And when your friends take that trip, you say, oh, that sure be fun. I don't have the money because I just have to have it from my cash flow and not from money that I've saved. So, yeah, I think retirees would be well served to think about not just relying on Social Security or public benefits.
Yeah.
And sometimes those will have cost of living increases built in. Social Security does.
Okay.
And we've seen that 6 or 7% this year for Social Security retirees. But if inflation's 8, 9, 10, is 6, 7 catching up? No, not necessarily. Not every pension will give a substantial increase. It might be slight. So another piece of the puzzle to have in mind.
And it's interesting because the only times I did have conversations on inflation prior to the last 2 or 3 years here was probably about 5, 6 years ago when inflation was so tame, Social Security wasn't ever getting a cost increase, a cost of living increase. But retirees would still feel it, some aspect of their life. Again, the property tax, replace the roof, whatever it is.
Prices,
and they would say, why am I not getting an increase on my Social Security? So it is great that they have the cost of living.
But it's not going to make it up. Yeah.
But it's not always going to be sufficient enough to cover everything.
Okay. Well, and kind of what you're talking about there too, with all of that changing, obviously inflation changing, cost of living, all the things, but my risk tolerance stays at 0. Yeah. Is that a mistake, right? When we're talking about inflation and all of this?
It can be. Okay. I mean, I think the biggest thing I would say on this front is you can stay, again, like we have mentioned before, you can stay very, very, very conservative, even looking at accounts, again, that potentially are no risk to principal. They're not in the market, but yet can give you opportunities to make higher rates of return. But what I see all too often is, it makes me feel really good to open up, my online banking app or open my statement and see a large balance sitting in my savings account earning 0.1%. Nowadays, a little bit more. But to see that it makes them feel good to have that money on hand, but they're doing themselves a disservice because it could be growing at a much better rate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just want to make sure it's allocated right.
Yeah.
Again, going back to the value of the financial plan, to make sure that it's where it needs to be, and if it's not, then you gotta fix it.
Just makes the math harder, right? Yep. I mean, if you want to live in that world, that's okay. You have to be aware of the consequences of losing out on growth potential, and your 100,000 not turning into $1 million. Your 100,000 turns into 200 over 40 years, whatever it is. But it's just a different equation altogether. That doesn't give you the same growth and the same lifestyle to live on in retirement, and the same coverage if something does happen in retirement, come medical costs, come this, that, or the other. And a lot of people have scars from 2000 tech bubble or 2008.
Sure.
And there's definitely conversations we have to have where we educate them on that's not every year, that's not always happening. There's going to be volatility like we talked about, but If you trust in the process and you're allocated the right way, maybe not all of your money has to be invested in risk assets. But if you are willing to take on some of it, it can then support your retirement further potentially.
And it's also too just talking about where are you willing to take a risk, because I know plenty of people that say, well, all my money's in a savings account, so I'm not risky. I said, well, you're taking a risk, right? Inflation is real. And what's interesting about this bout of inflation is if you planned and you were in certain financial assets, those assets did go up before the inflation bump, right? We've seen what real estate home prices have done.
Yeah.
I know this year's been rough, but we've seen what equity valuations have done. We've seen what asset prices have done. And if you had planned for inflation and you were in some of these assets, then you went up, right? You appreciated during those timeframes. But if you were in a savings account and you were earning 0.2% and inflation hit, you did take a risk. And that risk was, again, that my money's safe, but I may not keep up with inflation like I need to. And again, that's okay. I'm never going to force anyone to say, hey, you should be an investor and you should invest in this kind of a thing. I want to work within what they're comfortable with, but ultimately you should have a conversation then. Have a conversation with an advisor and we could still try and find better options.
Yeah, I sometimes will tell people, you're at $50,000 in cash, that money's unemployed right now, right? You're not putting it to work. It's not working for you. Of course, there's a balance. You want to have some secure and safe if something comes up. But above and beyond that, you should be looking at options to grow it better.
People who do a really good job of building wealth do a very good job at keeping their money working for them. And so, I think we have this perception, right, that Elon Musk has a checking account, and in that checking account balance is $12 billion. Yeah. No, he does not. Almost every bit of his asset is allocated to something. In fact, probably a lot of it is double allocated. Can you put a lien against my Tesla stock so I can buy Twitter? It's those kind of things that he's continuing to push his assets out there to have it work for him. Now, I'm not saying that's what everyone should be doing in terms of their financial assets. But again, people who do a good job at building wealth are doing those kind of things.
Okay. And I'll just emphasize again, a financial plan. I think I've said that 3 or 4 times today, but this is just so great. I love having this conversation. A financial planner will meet with you and help you figure out, here's the pie. We always show a pie chart. Financial advisors show pie charts all the time, but there's certain assets that where we can distribute money around, but it depends on that conversation. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish and how much should be in each portion of the pie. And then when we know that amount is in the checking account or savings account, we're expecting it to not yield much or earn much there.
Right.
And then the other stuff is going to be working hard over here. When you get that allocation right, then that's when you'll have success and you'll be able to see the outcome that you're looking for, what you're trying to achieve, which is really nice.
One of the most fun things in building out a retirement plan and some of the tools we have is you can show, hey, members, you have $50,000 in cash and you have $20,000 in checking. Well, we can keep that money in checking as your retirement savings, move it to money market savings, make some interest. But that cash, if we do put it to work, right, whether it's in a low risk or no risk place, somewhere we can at least make more than the 0.05 or the 2%. Yeah. Suddenly it buys them more years of coverage of income in retirement, right? And as it stands, maybe they ran out of money at 75. But if we move that from here to this bucket with us, where you can make a little bit more or have a higher growth potential, suddenly your money now covers you to age 90, right? Yeah. Would you rather see it on your app and feel comfortable there and know you might run out of it early? Or would you rather look at other options, grow it, and have the ability to potentially cover you through the extent of your life?
And this is just talking about, again, that financial plan, talking about these tools where we can show, right, we can plug this information into a software program and help them understand those choices so that they're making those with their eyes wide open.
Because saying them is one thing, but it's nice to have a visual tool that they can see in front of them and see, the extension of their assets.
Okay, well, and a couple more mistakes kind of going off of that that I wanted to touch on too was retirement age, right? What does that actually look like? And then my lifespan.
Yeah.
Retirement age, like Jared said, tell me when you're going to die and
I'll tell you when to retire.
The thing for me about the retirement age that I think is interesting is if you look at surveys, I think it's about 32 or 36% of the time people retire for health. They cite health issues on why they're retiring. So we'd all like to think that we retire when I'm good and ready.
When we want to.
And go out on our terms with a big party. Been here 17 years, Mountain America. So,
I think Jared wants a party.
We'll get you a party. You too, Spencer.
Sweet. But the truth is, for many of us, that's not how retirement works.
Yeah.
When those situations happen, if you've done a plan ahead of time, you can really adjust to me. And that's what I try to tell clients all the time, is that a financial plan is not meant to say that everything's going to go according to plan.
Yeah, it's not exact.
It won't, right? But it's meant so that we can deal with any of the challenges that come our way. And that could be inflation, that could be an early retirement. And so a big mistake, though, again, is just assuming, well, I want to work till 70. That might not be an option.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never had someone look at a financial plan and say, that's too much money to have saved for retirement, right? It's usually, it's not enough, or you're in a good place. And if you have more, then if you do have a health concern, if you do have, something happen to your family, the more you have saved, the more options you have to deal with it, whatever comes your way. So the more you save now, the more, the higher ability you have to deal with whatever wrench is thrown your way down the road.
And the reality with the retirement date, what you were asking about, some people just, depending on their field of work, they might get to those retired years and say, I'm actually okay working still. Maybe I'll go to a part-time contractor basis where I'm just giving a little bit of advice here to the new people coming in the industry or something like that. And then some people, they get to age 60 and they're like, my health or a family situation or
burned out.
They're burned out and they're just like, just get me out of here kind of thing. And so I think with a financial plan is we're trying to target people plus or minus 5 years from their retirement date, knowing that they might extend or they might be done earlier, just depending on their situation.
And then that's a conversation of, when should I file? If you retire at 60, do we have to file at 62 and take a discount? Do you have assets to cover you till then? If not, well, tough it out or work part-time for a couple of years.
And you're talking file Social Security?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
But more of the complexity.
Social Security. Yeah.
So the answer in a nutshell is it depends. Oh, we're good.
I was trying. I thought we'd get them all. You dropped it. All right.
Next one.
I was trying to set everybody up.
I love it. We all missed out on that. What other mistakes? Any others we need to talk about?
My laptop just turned off, so I have no idea.
We covered them all. I asked you that rhetorically, knowing that we covered them all.
Okay.
So
I wasn't
You
sure
can ask
if there was
again.
anything else. All
we
right.
can close
Anything
this, you guys.
It depends. Retirement plan.
So basically, though, in a nutshell, what I've learned from you guys, just to summarize it all, there's plenty of mistakes to be made, but really, it depends, right? And so we need to just come meet with you and talk through all of our shame and guilt and make sure we're prepared for the future.
Yeah, and I would say with the mistakes too, is just to kind of put an exclamation point on it, is meet with a financial planner, because we've seen a lot of members make some mistakes, and we've seen some that have done it right, and we've even as advisors have learned things over the years. We're like, oh, that's a good strategy. That member did that, and that was really cool. And so we want to share that, and I think that's what this podcast is about.
Yes.
Like and subscribe.
Wow,
But
that was
like,
a good one.
we need to share that knowledge. We don't need to hoard the wealth knowledge. We need to share it with others so others can benefit from it. So everyone can rise with the tide.
Yeah, and the only
love
other
that.
thing I'd say too is it's usually a very positive conversation.
Yep.
I mean, I know we sometimes feel like, oh, I got to go, and what if it doesn't look? Most of the members I meet with, every situation is a very positive experience, and people walk away feeling much better about their situation than they did before. And that's the way it should work. If you're working with a financial advisor, you should walk out better after than you were before.
It's clarity. I mean, people feel good and you feel good explaining to them and confirming that they're in a good place, or at least they have your help now to get things improved or fixed where possible. So it's not supposed to be intrusive. It's not supposed to be something they need to stress about, but come on in, with an open mind. Let us take a look at where you're at. If it's a stamp of approval, great. If there's things we can do to improve, great. Let's see if we can help you out.
Yeah. And if you have any blaring questions to ask all of you, I mean, we know your answer is going to be ready.
It depends.
It depends.
Yes.
Yay.
That's good.
Okay,
Sorry.
we got it. Did we get it all together?
I went a
No,
little early,
you kind
my
of
bad.
screwed it up. But
You can
that's
try
okay. Okay, so we're going to, because you guys have done such a good job of, giving us love with like and subscribe, hit that notification button, Hulk smash it, all the things, right? Tell us
That's
what
our generation.
Totally not my generation. No, I'm kidding. Tell us what branches you specifically serve and work at.
So Spencer and I work in a partnership, and we collectively cover the branch in Holiday, in Mill Creek, and in Sugar House.
Okay.
If anyone does want to meet with us, we'll make sure that a link to our calendar is attached in the show notes below.
Awesome. And Stuart?
I get the great pleasure of helping to take care of these people, to take care of our members. So I get to work with them. And
he's our boss, so I have to. He's going to make sure we do a good job.
And that's a nice way to say
it. Fair enough. Yeah. So Stuart runs the world, is what you're telling me. Okay.
Basically.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect.
I'll take that.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I know I have learned a lot. Hopefully, I mean, you guys clearly have not learned from each other because you already knew it all. Sure. But
no, there was lots of comments here that I'm just like, oh, that's a great advice.
Yeah. Well,
sure
we really appreciate you coming on and being willing to share your knowledge, and hopefully, right, we've inspired all of you as well to come and meet with a wealth advisor. Absolutely. And so we will see you all on the next episode of Guiding You Forward.